Okay, let's try now. Can you guys hear me now? Let's do a sound check. Okay, let's try now. Can you guys hear? That seems to work. I'm so sorry. Okay, so every single time I'm trying to go online, there's always something something new that I have to struggle with. So today it looks like we mastered it quite quickly. Hello and welcome everybody. I'm Dr. Catherine Horton and this is the Global Crime Fighters series. So I would like to jump straight into the topic today because we have a lot to cover. But before I do so, I would like to make a few announcements. Number one, I'm going to split the general day-to-day news back out into the regular war updates. So hopefully, if I've got the time tomorrow, there should be a war update where I, report some news. These are ongoing, kind of working news, what's happening currently, what are the plans. And what the Global Crime Fighters is, if you like, a lecture series, more like an open investigation, but that is much more broad. So that is much more long lasting. This is the idea. So, tune in tomorrow. I really hope that tomorrow I can do it at the time of the Global Crime Fighters, where it has been scheduled, which would be at midday on the east coast of the US. It would be 6 p.m. in Central Europe and 5 p.m. in the UK. So I hope that I can tune in much quicker because it takes a lot less preparation to just give quick news. And then on Saturday, I'm happy to announce that there will be an interview with Richard Lighthouse. So that's an engineer who worked for NASA, and he will be talking about the global criminality, but especially about satellite systems and the involvement of satellites. And most of you know that I've moved house because of the directed energy weapon machine gunning in my old flat. And I can report that in the new property where I'm now, I feel a lot better. I do not have this continuous machine gunning from the neighbors from all sides that I had in the previous flat. But I can also tell you that especially during the night, I am machine gun nonstop, and this time it seems to come from above. So I suspect that satellites or maybe a type of silent drones or whatever the hell might be flying above my house fairly silently could be involved. Okay, so I am pretty sure about this now. And of course, it's not surprising, but I can't, just declare, okay, this is what's happening in my case, unless I've got fairly good evidence. And by now, I do have fairly good evidence that this is precisely what is happening. So, okay, so these are the announcements. Tune in tomorrow for the news, and then tune in to the day after tomorrow for the special investigators interview, where we are focusing on specific topics. But today, the episode is called Going Undercover, and it follows on from the previous episodes, which was going to school, the global crime cartel infiltration of schools and the control of children. And then it also follows the going to university episode. And now it's pretty much, we're up to the point where maybe a trainee intel agent would be up to, who has been maybe groomed and pre-programmed in kindergarten and in school age, and then was selected at university and maybe even recruited to the intelligence services, because a lot of recruitment is happening in the intelligence services. And then after university, you would, maybe start your job at a contractor, or actually at the intelligence agencies proper, and you would maybe go undercover. So this is what we're doing as well. Today we're going undercover, but of course we are going undercover in a different way. We are going undercover as investigators, and we're trying to find out what on earth happened in the world. And I remind people that the current situation that we are in, is that we have a type of criminality happening worldwide, whereby people are being tortured and mutilated and silently murdered all around the world. And the methods seem to be identical. The technology is identical. And, the outcomes, of course, are also identical, but it's in a very coordinated fashion. And it seems to be happening lockstep in every country, from Japan to Europe, to Australia, to the US. And there are also victims in Africa and Latin America. So this was the whole purpose of the Global Crime Fighters. Many of you know that before this we had the Techno Crime Fighters Forum, and that was a collaboration between Europe and the US. But this is now expanding it globally. And what I'm trying to do in these episodes is I'm trying to focus on those things which are common to us all. So there are many elements of this criminality that vary locally and have maybe local gangs and local political backgrounds, but there are certain things that are common to us all. And if we educate ourselves what these are, we can pick them up and we can run an investigation much better and much wider, because we can learn from each other across the world. So this is the entire idea of this Global Crime Fighters Forum. And to really bring home to you just how global this global crime cartel actually is, and give you hands-on evidence. The first things I would like to start off with is the symbology of this, this global crime cartel. Sometimes I call them the mafia because they have their origin in Italy and are related to the mafia, but it's not just the Italian mafia I'm talking about here. I'm talking about the Japanese mafia, the Yakuza. I'm talking about the Chinese mafia, the Latin American mafia. I'm talking about one organized crime cartel here. And the entire purpose of doing this is to understand their methods, but also this is not just a lecture course, this is a live investigation. The purpose is to lead to actual arrests, okay? So this is it's of paramount importance that we get on to court cases, arrests, and all this, and jail the criminals, because they have a vast network, as I would like to prove to you today, that is killing us all. And if we're not fast enough, they will literally kill us in our beds. That's the whole point of using directed energy weapons, okay? So, but anyway, I just put it out there, and those people who have followed the techno crime fighters know a lot. And maybe today in one or two places I will repeat myself, and I'm sorry for all those people who maybe have seen these links and these references, but also understand that every week there are more and more people joining us and more people coming online. And we can't expect them that they, do the entire year and a half of research and watch all the, I think, how many episodes did we have with Techno Crime Fighters? It was a lot, it felt like 70 or something. So, we have to repeat ourselves nonstop. And I'm hoping that by doing that, I can help jog your memory and help to maybe shed a different light on things. So this is the entire purpose. But let's launch into it. So as I said, I'm tackling a global crime cartel, and the evidence that it's truly global is in their symbolism. And you have to understand that this, and this is what I'm going to prove to you today, that this global crime cartel didn't just start in 2001, as many say, with 9/11 and the Patriot Act, and that's not when all our problems began. Our problems also didn't begin in the 1940s or 1930s with the Nazis. These problems and these methods and the secret code goes back centuries, and you can find it in ancient architecture, you can find it in ancient texts, and it's all the same, okay? So, and the proof for this, right, is to start with one symbol that's already now hopefully known by everybody to be a symbol of this global crime cartel, which is the obelisk, okay? So the obelisk has got many different meanings, but at its core, what it symbolizes is the organizational architecture of this global crime cartel. So an obelisk has a pyramid tip at the top, and then a long, top part and the base. And this is pretty much how our society really looks like. The people at the base are the, if you like, normal people, the, Joe Average, the moms and pa's, everywhere, who are going to work, trying to earn an honest living and abide by the rule of law and by ethics, as most of us would recognize it. Now, they are one part of our global society, and they literally form the base of how our systems really work, the flat base that this obelisk stands on. above them are the infiltrators and the members of this global crime cartel, the informants and all the many actors and assets and agents that operate in the interests of this global crime cartel. And they in turn are organized into a very tight hierarchy. Okay, and if you are dealing with crooks and killers, you have to be absolutely certain that they do what you tell them and nothing else. Okay, so this is why the hierarchy is so strict, and whoever doesn't stick to it will just get killed. So these are the rules. Okay, but then what you have is a massive tower where a part of our society is organized in a secret fashion into this rigid structure, and they are ruled at the top by what these days would be called high net worth individuals, but what I would rather call ancient mafia families. These are ancient crime families who've been in the business of crime and controlling this criminal architecture for centuries. Okay, so they are at the very top, and we can then, try to investigate who they are. But at its very core, whatever anybody tells you, the obelisk is the actual organizational structure of our society. This is why it appears everywhere. Okay, now the obelisk doesn't just have this meaning. And remember, if you're running a crime cartel, I mean, if you think about the mafia, most of the time their staple business is in racketeering and in running things like, brothels and the drug trade. Okay. So if you combine the two, you've got entertainment, the prostitutes and the cocaine, right? And then on the other hand, you've got the hitmen and the serial killers, right? So this is why I'm saying these are their two staple business plans. So before I said that another symbol is also, for example, the double columns, okay, that appears, for example, in Freemasonry. We will get onto that. And for me, the double pillars represent not just, dark and light and the duality and blah, 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 this esoteric stuff, but, very hands-on, the two basic business plans of this mafia, which is fucking and killing, okay? So that's the double pillars. These are the two business plans, and the obelisk is the overall organizational structure of society. Once you understood that, everything else will become clear, okay? Now, if we just take this as a working hypothesis, okay, so here's Dr. Catherine Horton. She claims that this is what an obelisk actually stands for. She also claims that this global crime cartel is ancient. It's going back centuries and millennia, okay? Then it follows that you should find these obelisks, these symbols of this global crime cartel going back in time, right? And you should also find them everywhere around the world, because this global crime cartel had to spread globally to be global, right? Obvious. Okay, now here's the evidence that this is precisely what you'll find. Let me just show you. Okay, let me share my screen. So this is an obelisk that pretty much everybody probably knows, or certainly should know. This is the obelisk right at the middle of the Vatican, right? Or the Vatican Square. Now here you see kind of what I mean. You've got, a base here. In this case, you've got 1, 2, 3 bases, okay, 3 blocks, right? Or 2 blocks. You can think about what those might be. But after that, you've got this huge tower that's tapering very, very, very slowly, and then it tapers fast at the top. Now, if this were true, what I said, and this represents the true organization of our society, right? Why is it tapering so slowly here and so fast at the top? And I say that's because if the people who are organized, right, if you think this is an organigram, right, and every organigram has got levels and lower management and then middle management and then senior management. Well, if you're running serial killers and crooks, right, you need almost as many people to watch them as you have crooks running around, right? You might maybe have 10 crooks and 9 people watching them, right? Or 9 people supervising them and telling them what to do. But you have to be sure that you taper it such that it doesn't run out of control, or else your entire middle bit crumbles and there are continuous, infighting. And if you're running serial killers, what's stopping them from killing you? So you need to have at every level almost as many people above as you have below, because if you've got more people below than you have above, the chances of a hostile takeover, as it would be called in the corporate world, is massive. Okay, so this is why you have this gentle tapering. And then at the very top, you have this fast tapering. That's typically because, at the base of this pyramid at the top, and the very tip, the difference, the financial difference, the difference in what's it called, net assets, right, or net wealth, is massive. Okay, absolutely massive. And it is for this reason that you can have much fewer people, controlling a larger number, because you can pay for so many more people to keep you safe, and you can pay for a buffer army around you. Okay, so this you can simulate, and you can find out that this is pretty much the system you end up with if you are trying to, organize people, organize a society somehow that you maximize control in a few hands, right? You will always end up with this structure. This is what I predict. I can't prove it to you here now because I can't write a computer simulation right now. But if you do a couple of back of the envelope, considerations, you will end up with this. And this is precisely what happened since, mankind existed. They have always been groups and groupings and group leaders, because we are group animals and we're genetically predisposed to follow a leader. And from this, it follows that, eventually leaders infight, and then a super leader arises who then infights with other super leaders, and so on and so on and so on. And eventually our entire organization was organized like this. Now, what I would like to say about the obelisk is that the base here, below the bit where the pyramid starts, is mostly totally oblivious about what's going on above. Okay, so as you can see, there's a cut, and then there's a block of people. If you think of this as an organigram, and maybe another block of people, right? And maybe this buffer, this group of people is the buffer below for the people below, and so on. But on the whole, these people are totally oblivious. They are not in this mafia organization. They do not know anything about the secret language or the codes or the gestures or the rules of the secret, world. They just live their day to day, and maybe they are pleased that they are one block above the poor people, right? I mean, this could be the rich versus the poor, or whichever division you would like to take. There are always, these double divisions. Okay, now everything I said so far is conjecture, right, to you, because you haven't seen the evidence I have seen. So let me try to give you a feel that what I'm saying is actually the truth. And let's have a look at where this symbolism of the obelisk appears. This is, as I said, in the Vatican, right, a very famous one. Now this one here is called Cleopatra's Needle, and this one is in London. Curious, isn't it? I mean, this has been actually, I think, lugged all the way there from Alexandria, right? You can see hieroglyphs here, and, they put two sphinxes here at the base. Very pharaonic, right? Very curious. Now, again, you can see the same obelisk shape and always the square pyramid tapering, okay? Same structure. Now, as I already said, right, if this is an organized crime cartel, they are not the holiest of the holy people, all right? Typically, they have the mentality and the general approach to life of thugs, right, of criminals who are running brothels and are killing people. So typically, their insider jokes are all about their major business plans, which is fucking and killing. Right. So with time, I can already tell you that the obelisk was taken to be, the symbol for the penis. It's a big fat phallus. And, and then when you think about, you've got these two, half woman, half pussycat, staring at a massive rock hard stone phallus, you probably can guess what the insider joke is, right? So typically, you know, a sphinx is a guardian symbol. It should be guarding something. It should be fighting outwards. But in fact, these two sphinxes, they are literally facing the big stone cock. Yeah, so that in itself is an insider joke by the crime cartel, but you have to understand the way they are thinking, and you have to understand how sphinxes typically work to understand the joke. If you remember, in Egypt, the sphinx, and it's rumored that there were actually two, but it's facing away from the pyramid, right? Like your guard dog is not staring at you, it should be staring at the attacker, right? Facing away. So already here, if you really, you know your history and know your symbolism, you should pick out that it's very odd to have, an obelisk from Egypt in London, and it's even stranger to have two sphinxes staring at the obelisk instead of staring outwards. Okay, so I'm saying this is a symbol of this global crime cartel as much as the Vatican is. Okay. And here I would also point you to the fact that Cleopatra's Needle, as it's called, right, with an innuendo in that as well, is located on the territory of the so-called Square Mile, which is the City of London. It's not London or Greater London as we know it. This is the City of London with an area of, I think, 1.2 square miles. So this is the Square Mile. And this is a private, extraterritorial tax haven at the heart of London. Okay, so you can read more about this and the background to this if you go. Let me just show you the book once I'm at it. Let me just go to, you can use Amazon in the US, Amazon in the UK. If you go and read Treasure Island by the journalist here, Nicholas Shaxson, here, both are the same book. Here, maybe we can enlarge this. What this book is about is pretty much what it shows here, right? It's about, this is meant to be England, I think, and you've got an industrial, devastated north and a very wealthy south. And this book says it's tax havens and the men who stole the world, okay? And in the last third of this book, he talks specifically about his observations about the City of London. And so far, this is one of the best books I found with leads for investigators who want to understand the City of London. But anyway, he doesn't talk so much about the obelisk, but he certainly talks about the organized crime aspect of the role of the City of London, and he explains what the City of London is. But it is said that the rights of the City of London predate William the Conqueror, okay? Now, William the Conqueror, as many of you know, right, invaded England in 1066. Now, if the rights of the City of London predate 1066, whose rights are they? And there's literally only one candidate for this who has any sorts of rights before 1066, that are higher than the English crown, or I should say the English rulers, and that is the Vatican itself. Okay, so it's not too big a surprise to find an obelisk in the Vatican and an obelisk in the City of London. Okay, now another obelisk, this is just Europe so far, okay? Another obelisk, a massive obelisk, you can find, of course, in Washington, D.C., the Washington Monument, right? And of course, the Americans need to have everything bigger and better, so they got themselves a massive stone cock. Great, right? If they knew the true meaning of this, they would have downsized it. They wouldn't have made it bigger, they would have made it smaller than the others, because what this massive phallus right at the heart of Washington, D.C. actually represents is this global crime cartel putting its cock in the US, if I may put it like that. Okay, so it shows that the global crime cartel has established itself in the US and it owns the US, hence the size, okay? Now, this big monument here, right, is not just the only thing that's odd about it. Also note, for example, that at night it's lit up and it literally looks like the all-seeing eye, right? What coincidence. But there's more details about this, which is from this angle, you can see other buildings that also have their internal meaning. You can see a Greek temple, and you can see a dome with a little, it's called the oculus, as I was informed, right? At the top, it's a little window going up, and then there's a little rotunda at the top, right? Now, everywhere where you've got this global organized crime cartel, you will typically find the phallus, some Greek temple, and a dome like that. If this is a phallus, then that represents the female breast, okay? Oxford, which I talked about in the last episode, Going to University, also has a rotunda like that, right? It's called the Radcliffe camera. A camera means room in Latin, but a camera these days is a camera lens, right? And that too has exactly the shape. And that too is right at the heart of Oxford. In fact, it defines the center of Oxford, as I explained last time. And more than that, if you go into buildings like that and you go into the middle and you look up, it looks like the all-seeing eye looking down on you. And then the fact that this little bit where the light comes in is called the oculus just underlines the whole thing, right? So in other words, you will find these symbols over and over. You will find, you know, well, in Oxford, we used to call the Radcliffe camera the big boob, okay? So you'll find the big boob, the phallus, and the Greek temple. This is, you know, the same absolutely everywhere. But this is just Washington, D.C. Now, what's curious about Washington, D.C., and again, many people know this already, is that Washington, D.C. is private territory. It is not owned by the American people. Just like the City of London, it goes back to private ownership. And in fact, Washington, D.C., as far as I know, is also extraterritorial. Just like the Vatican, and just like the City of London, the square mile, it is a city-state. Okay? So traditionally, there were 3 city-states, and maybe if I can find the flag of Washington, D.C., maybe I can show you if I can find it. Yes, here it is. So this is the flag of Washington, D.C., right, according to Wikipedia. And what this represents here is the 3 city-state, okay? Vatican, City of London, Washington, D.C. And you will notice that this is in red and white, the traditional Swiss colors, right? So the 3 city-state over the base, big base, red, white of Switzerland. And for those people in remote parts of the world who don't know what the flag of Switzerland looks like, it looks like this, red and white, okay? So this is the flag of Switzerland, and this is the flag of Washington, D.C. Pure coincidence, right? Now, it has 3, what I call satanic pentagrams, right? It has 3 pentagrams, and these 3 pentagrams represent the 3 city-states. That's what I'm just going to put to you, okay? And the reason why the flag is like this and why these 3 city-states or these 3 private territories are emphasized is because they are the oldest. The Vatican is the very oldest, then the City of London, and then Washington, D.C. And these 3 parts of cities, right, these private areas, they, as I will explain to you and put it to you, are owned by the global crime cartel. They are private territories. So it is really ironic, right, that the entirety of Catholic religion is ruled, right, not even out of Italy, it's ruled out of a city-state, the Vatican. The entire financial power of the UK and pretty much the world, is ruled out of a private extraterritorial city-state and tax haven, and the entire firepower of the US military is ruled out of an extraterritorial foreign city-state. In other words, these three are not under anybody's control but that of the global crime cartel, right? This is what it means. Extraterritorial means it's not part of your territory. You really have to dig into the history of these places to find out that I'm right, but you already know that the Vatican is a state, right? It has its own diplomats and so on. It has state status. The City of London is a bit harder to find out, but you can find it in the book by Nicholas Shaxson. And Washington, D.C. takes a bit more research, certainly if you are in Europe, but you can find out that exactly the same is true about Washington, D.C. Now, once we have put all this together, right, let's go back. So please read this book, okay? But now let me go back, right? So we were here. Now, if you just get it into your head that this is what's happening here, everything else will become clear, okay? So if you assume that I'm right in saying this, it follows that the entire Capitol, right, the entire US Congress and the entire everything else that's in Washington, D.C. is on the territory of a foreign power that is not the United States. Isn't that ironic? Well, in reverse, you can also say that a lot of the laws, certainly the nonsense ones, are invalid because they were made on the territory of a foreign power by institutions that are entirely governed and located on the territory of a foreign power. This is what it means, right? And this is not by accident, because essentially, as I will explain it to you Americans, you have been enslaved from day one. That was the plan all along, and this is exactly what's happening right now. If you're wondering how you got here, research Washington, D.C. and find out in what country does your Congress actually sit. And if you find out that Congress doesn't actually sit in the United States as you know it, you know that, well, if you get screwed over by your government, it's not your government. They're working for somebody else. Okay? So these sort of ancient laws and the ownership of ground and land and their rights, their ancient rights, and for how long they are legally valid, matter the earth. Okay? But what I'm trying to put to you is that you guys in the United States are being screwed over by this global crime cartel, and a big fat visible evidence of that is this massive stone cock right at the heart of Washington, D.C. And you guys are being screwed over just as much as the British are with this stone phallus located at the City of London that doesn't belong to Britain. Right, that isn't even under the rule of the British monarch. Okay, but because this is a tax haven, every single bank has its headquarters here. So every single bank which you thought was British actually is a bank of the global crime cartel. And that's why they are registered on the territory of the global crime cartel. Okay, so we have these locations here in the US, right? The all-seeing eye, very nice. And now this is Paris. Right here already, when I searched for the Paris obelisk, I already got Illuminati symbols here, right? But if you look at Paris, this is a wonderful shot here because you've got this woman, right, putting her her hand in her side, right, and staring down at literally three phalluses. Number one, a very ornamental one, but it's a kind of, you know, the same stuff anyway. You've got a traditional phallus, and here the top is golden because that's where all the money is, you see. This is the rich man's world. This is the organizational structure of these criminals, and that's all of us at the bottom, right? And then this is also an obelisk, right? I mean, maybe you can just about recognize the phallic shape here. And that's kind of like a modern version. But at some point, you know, the Masons thought we need to put something bigger here, right? So they did this, and then the Americans had their Washington Monument, right? Big, fat Masonic phalluses all around the world. But again, this is just, you know, Europe or Western Europe and the United States. What about the rest of the world? And now I can show you this thing is an obelisk right at the heart of Moscow. It's next to the Kremlin. Big fat obelisk, same structure, base, you know, here I call it the shaft for obvious reasons, square base, pyramid, and that's it, and some golden doodle at the top. Now, let's have a look at this. This is called the Romanovsky obelisk, right? Now, if we have a look at the Romanovsky obelisk, we find out that this was put here, it was erected. I mean, isn't it funny, right? When they call it, they erected this obelisk on July 10th, 1914, right? It was created as a celebration of the tertiary of the House of Romanov. Really? So, well, from this it follows that the House of Romanov was a member of the global crime cartel, okay? Because they used a symbol to celebrate their tertiary. Now, you know what happened to the House of Romanov, don't you? So, in other words, and this is 1914, right? And very quickly after that, it was the end of the Romanovs. So, this wasn't really a celebration of the tertiary of the House of Romanov. This was a celebration of the tertiary of the rule of the global crime cartel in Russia through the House of Romanov, which explains why the Romanovs are no longer and the obelisk is still standing. Okay, now let's just go down and have a look at images of this obelisk. I opened some here. So this is the top of the obelisk. If I zoom in, there are a couple of interesting things. For example, at the very top, sorry, the one on the left is the old original one, and the one on the right is the refurbished version. I think they look pretty much, for our purposes, identical, right? But the symbols are the same. So let's look at the one on the right. What you see here are all symbols of Freemasonry and all symbols of the global crime cartel. You see the double-headed eagle, right? That appears in Freemasonry. You see a big fat crown at the top, as in the Crown Corporation. As I said before, that's the corporate structure of the global crime cartel, the Crown Corporation. But you also see a total of 3 crowns, right? And as the researcher Santo, I think his name was Santo Bonacci, if I'm not mistaken, you can find him online. He explains the papal bulls. Yeah, papal bulls. Yeah, they were total papal bulls. But there were 3 where basically the Vatican said that they own everything. They own your land, your soul, your ass, your children, everything, the air, the sky, it's theirs. So those are the 3 crowns right there. And then, of course, at the top, right, it's meant to be a cross, but from this angle, it just looks like Switzerland. But anyway, that's just coincidence here. But you have the 3 crowns, right? And you've got the cross at the very top, the Masonic double-headed eagle, right? And as you go down, okay, right? I mean, here, this is an orb, which probably means we own the world, and I don't know what that is. But again, there are these, internal jokes by this global crime cartel. And really, to me, that the one on the left looks like a dildo, and that one, to me, implies we're holding you guys by the balls in Russia. But anyway, effectively, this is what they're doing. Now, if we go down along this edifice, we see another symbol here. That is another symbol of the global crime cartel through and through. It starts with the satanic tongue. It's called the mocking tongue in heraldry. I personally call it the villa fellatio tongue, right? but it appears here as much as it appears on the boundary of the City of London in the boundary dragons, right? Let me show for all those people who are new and haven't seen this before. If you type in City of London boundary dragon or dragons, let's have a look at the images. This is what they look like. Oops, let's get the bigger one. Right, there is the mocking tongue. And again, there's the cross of St. George, you know, strikingly looking like the flag of Switzerland inverted. But here it is. You can see this dragon with a pointed tail and the scales, and then this kind of like dragony, you know, claws. Yeah. It's a mythical creature that adults thought they had to put there, right at the heart of London. Why the hell did they think that? Well, the reason why they thought that is it was important signaling. Oops, sorry, where was I here? This is important signaling. It means you are affiliated with the global crime cartel. So you've got the mocking tongue, then the sword basically is the right to kill, right? Here you've got the shield. The original shield looks a bit more like a sun, you know, like the Jesuit sun. The sun also appears in the Jesuit logo. Then a little bird whose meaning, I think, varies. I'm not sure what it means right here. But again, you have this kind of weird, you know, pointy tail, you know, weird flame-like fur, and then these kind of liony dragon claws here at the bottom. Very interesting, but one-to-one identical with the symbolism in London. And this is Moscow. Okay, then I'm not going to read the text because I can't. Now let's have a look at the base. Here you can just see the outlines of a wreath, another symbol of the global crime cartel. If you zoom in, this is what it looks like. This is what you saw here. Okay, the wreath. And then you also see some symbol which probably is meant to be, I don't know, what are they called, a pine cone, perhaps, but it also strikingly has the structure of an artichoke, right? Which again is a symbol of the mafia. It just so happens that it looks a bit like that, right? But anyway, most prominently here you have what looks like St. George slaying the dragon. St. George, right? Where the hell did we see that? We saw it in the boundary dragons. So let me just open it again. Sorry, I was stupid enough to kill it. Here in the boundary dragons, right, you've got the cross of St. George. But here in the City of London, it pretty much looks like, you know, it wasn't St. George who won, it's the dragon who won, right? The battle. And he's like sticking his tongue out, you know, screw you lot. I rule over this place. Okay? So I personally think this entire story about St. George defeating the dragon is exactly what it's said to be, a myth. And in real life, the dragon, as in the global crime cartel, actually won and probably enslaved St. George, right? Either way, you have these symbolisms. And then here at the bottom, you've got some sort of weird, you know, satanic looking creature. I don't even know what the hell that is, right? But anyway, very weird and very freakish. So all in all, we have these symbols, and there's probably much more you can pull out of this. But this is in Russia. Okay, what the hell is doing City of London cartel signaling in Moscow? Okay, well, the connection is, of course, the House of Romanov. Now, another thing in Russia here, right? This is St. Petersburg now. This is the Leningrad hero city obelisk, right? Another obelisk right at the heart of the city. And this time round, what's at the top? It's a satanic pentagram, a golden satanic pentagram. What coincidence? Okay. So again, the same symbolism, and this is Russia. So to me, it looks like, right, if I read this right, the Masons put their knob right at the heart of St. Petersburg and right at the part of, where is it here, Moscow, right? So it very much looks like there is no difference between the US and Russia. And it doesn't matter what, you know, the Russiagate people and the media are saying. Because when you look at this, you can prove that there's no fucking difference. This is all the same. This is all the same down to a T. So now, once we recognize this, we can put away with this nonsense distinction between US, Europe, and Russia and face up to the fact that we are all battling the same organized crime cartel. And there's only one question. Are you part of the organized crime cartel? Are you part of the cock? Or are you part of the base? Right? Are you part of the people who exploit? Or are you part of the people who are being exploited by organized crime? That is the only difference in the world that actually matters. Everything else, the difference between women and men, doesn't matter because we get both exploited by the crime cartel, albeit in different ways. And the difference between black and white doesn't matter because there are not that many black people in Moscow and still they are exploited, right? So it doesn't pissing matter. So with this, we can do away with, you know, Black Lives Matter and feminism and whatnot and communism and capitalism. This is all nonsense to confuse the matter. The only thing that actually matters is, are you here or are you there? That's it. And right now, what this program is about is I'm talking to the people here and I'm telling them, you guys need to lob this dick off if you want your life back, because if you don't, these people are going to shaft you. You'll get fucked by the Masons, literally. And once you know their symbolism, this is really easy to understand. Okay? I am sorry about the language, but today's episode is also about organized crime and the intelligence agencies where my patience is wearing extremely thin. So if you can't take the swearing, you should fuck off now. I'm sure there is some happy kitten video somewhere that you can watch and that will make you happy. Okay? Now for those, gosh, I can see that there are 114 people listening right now. I'm just going to do a very quick sound check because I'm really paranoid about being sabotaged. Gosh, I can. Yeah, okay, I can still hear me. That's great. So let me return to the entire investigation. Okay, so this is already completely dismantling 90% that's in the news, because if you open a newspaper, it will be about, oh, you know, white police officers killing black guys, so it's white on black, you know, or it's, oh, black thugs and gangs killing white women or white men in their homes and all that sort of stuff. And what I'm saying is this is all nonsense, because if you're talking about white police officers killing black guys randomly, check if the police officers are not by chance part of the Masons, because that means they are part of a global crime cartel. And then what you're saying is that a criminal is killing an innocent person. Yeah, that happens. But then that the problem is not black or white. The problem is you've got a bunch of bloody criminals in your police. Okay? And when you have black gangs marauding week on week or month on month in major cities, and the police really can't figure it out after the umpteenth attack, despite the fact that they have got all-pervasive surveillance as they demonstrate to the intel victims day on day, well, your problem is also not black gangs and black guys forming gangs, is it? Your real problem is that the global organized crime cartel has hired poor people, grouped them into gangs where they feel like they are, I don't know what, a black gang with all their hoodies and, you know. So they made a little ecosystem of gangsters and they unleashed them on the local population. Meanwhile, they tell their Masonic criminal police not to do anything about the gangs. Again, your problem is not the blacks, is it? Your problem is that the global crime cartel has organized poor black people into gangs and put criminals into the police. Again, you're back to the problem that you're fighting the global crime cartel. Really, that's your problem, isn't it? So again, as soon as you hear Russiagate, and the accusation was that, oh, Russian spies have whatever, you know, control Trump and they control the elections, they control the US. I mean, I can prove to you in 2 seconds that's bollocks, right? The global crime cartel controls both the US and Russia. It's not the Russians controlling the US. How could they? They're not enough people, right? But the global crime cartel can control Washington, D.C. because, look, they put a massive stone cock right at the center. And that has been their recognition symbol for as long as the Vatican exists. So what's your problem, guys? So when you know the symbolism, okay, you can hear these news and you can instantly think that's bollocks, okay? Instantly. So when I heard Russiagate, I couldn't do the deep analysis that Bill Binney and his team did, analyzing the data stream. And the beauty was I didn't need to. I can just sit at home in my underpants with my laptop, read the news, and know instantly that's bullshit. And it saves you a lot of time, you know? And this is what I want to teach you so that you start wisening up to what's really serious and what's utter bullcrap. And so far, we have been brought up with concepts that have absolutely no meaning. So concepts like capitalism, communism, feminism, democracy, this is nonsense. This is all very complex. They are little slogans that give you the feeling that you know what's going on, even though you haven't got a clue. And then you build your conversations and your media articles and your thinking around concepts you don't understand. And before you know it, you speak gobbledygook and you don't even understand that that's what you're doing, right? But as soon as you have the right model, everything else follows and everything becomes so easy. So very much like when you know the underlying physics and a handful of laws, you can calculate the motion of the solar system, of planets. You don't have to become a planet to know how a planet's going to move. It's going to be so easy. You can calculate it at school or at university, right? So, but for that to be possible, you need to have the right model. If you have the wrong model, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot, right? Or much more likely, you're going to go out and shoot a lot of innocent people thinking you're doing the right thing, which is what happened over and over. So my premise for this entire show is all these other concepts do not matter. The only thing that matters to our survival is, are we going to defeat this global organized crime cartel? Are we going to identify its members and are we going to jail them or give them the death penalty? Or are we going to continue totally oblivious, speaking gobbledygook on the media, talking about feminism and how snowflakes are the biggest plight to our life? Okay, so this is US versus Russia. As I've proven to you, both of them have already been captured by the Masons and by the Vatican crime cartel a long, long time ago, right? So everything that followed the murder of the House of Romanov, right, and the Stalinist mass murder, it was all this global crime cartel. It had nothing to do with communism, right? That was just a brand. It was a logo that the little, dummies could just wave their flags, because they can hardly wave flags saying, yay, we're in the global crime cartel, right? But they could say, yeah, we're for communism, and then just give a big blast speech, And by the way, if you don't believe me, maybe research a bit about Lenin. And if you come to Zurich, I can show you where Lenin lived, because he lived in Zurich, and that's where he developed a lot of his ideas, or rather his handlers did, and then gave it to him, right? And then so it came about that the global crime cartel, after they did away with the House of Romanov, right, which were actually fairly educated people, right, who were rather benevolent and were some sort of buffer between the total exploitation of the Russians, although the Russian people had been exploited to pretty much, the point of death by then. After that, what followed is that millions and millions of Russians were murdered by the global crime cartel. They were not murdered by the US Americans, right? They were murdered by their own people. And who were those people? Who were those Russians murdering other Russians, and why? Well, those were members of the global crime cartel. And if you go to China, you can see the same thing happen again, right? You didn't technically have an invasion of China. You just had the Chinese people suddenly deciding to murder other Chinese people in the millions. Now, what on earth popped into their little Chinese heads? Well, the same thing that popped into the Russians' heads and the Germans, right? The Sri Lankans, some Latin Americans and some Africans. They thought they can use the money of the mafia and get really rich if they kill their neighbor. And that was the business plan. And it worked. Sadly, it worked. And they succeeded in killing millions, and they got rich off it. They got homes, they got the assets, you know, sometimes they got their daughters to rape, the daughters of the neighbors, and you name it. It was a total thundering success. So when we're now standing at the crossroads, as we are today in 2018, we better wisen up to this global crime cartel, because I'm telling you, it's trying to pull off the very same business plan of getting every single population on the planet to kill its own people. We do not need to worry about an invasion of the Russians or the Chinese, because the way the global crime cartel has always worked is to use the people already in the country with knowledge of the society, of the system, of the people, to kill the others. Most of the time. Sometimes they were invasive wars, but really the big loss of life is always brought about like this. And this is exactly what's happening. So when I'm being machine gunned in Zurich, like I was before I moved out of that flat, those were Swiss people. And they were hitting me, but the times when they missed my body with the shots, they were hitting other Swiss people. And they were too fucking dumb to understand that, because they didn't understand the basic physics. But the global crime cartel doesn't care, right? All they want is for the Swiss to kill other Swiss people, you know? So this is how it is. Now, let me go back, because I really want to drill home the message of just what exactly we're dealing with. So let me just share my screen again, okay? And here we are. So this is the, Romanov, Romanov obelisk. You know what I mean? Yes, the Romanovsky obelisk. But if we go around, okay, this was Leningrad, or, previously, and then again called, known as St. Petersburg. This now here is Rio de Janeiro. Exactly the same structure. Exactly the same square pyramid at the top, right? There it is. So I can already tell you that the global crime cartel owns Rio de Janeiro, which is a pretty big city if you look it up. Now, this is the obelisk in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And if you zoom out and maybe look down from Google Maps onto the structure, you'll see the obelisk here, and then around it, what looks like a camera or an eye, right? Again, I told you that typically you have an obelisk and an all-seeing eye, and here you have it both in one. The obelisk and the all-seeing eye in Sao Paulo, right there. So Rio de Janeiro, Sao Paulo already fell to the global crime cartel. Now this is Bangkok in Thailand. Okay? And, when you have a global organized crime cartel that has as its business plans fucking and killing, and you have a city like Bangkok, guess what the global crime cartel is going to use that city for? And then you can maybe explain why, out of nowhere, Thailand suddenly started to have this massive industry of child prostitutes, right? It's not inherent to the people in Thailand to prostitute their children. It absolutely is not. They're, just as not likely as any American is, or just as likely as Americans are to be tempted into the global crime cartel to sell their children. But we have to recognize that we, people who are not part of the crime cartel, we are identical around the world, literally down to a T. We laugh the same way, we cry the same way, we get equally pissed off about not finding a parking space. And otherwise, right, we have the same problem with organized crime. So here it is right there. And then look, in Thailand, you even have military personnel protecting, you know, the big, massive stone cock. So you can, and from this alone, you can guess that the stranglehold of the crime cartel on Thailand and Bangkok in particular will be massive. It will be stifling. And when you look at actual news and crime statistics, that's precisely what's going on. Now, this here is now the obelisk in Singapore, right? Again, there we are. And as you can see, there are also some 3 stars or 3 little suns on the base. We have to zoom in to actually see what they look like. Hang on, maybe I can make it out. Yeah, little stars here, little suns, whatever, you know? Interesting. And again, you've got the wreath there. So that's it, people, right? This is Singapore already gone. We never woke up to this. And these people have been literally conquering. With these people, I mean the crime cartel. They've been conquering country after country after country, and we were totally oblivious to it. And they have gone completely undercover. Do you see? On one hand, they are completely undercover. On the other hand, as I can show you here, they are in your face. They've put a big cock in your face, and you still didn't get it. So this is pretty much the same structure in Ethiopia. Same idea. The tip is a bit, you know, different, but I think this is also a very old obelisk here. You know, back in the day, they were a bit more creative. So this is now the flag of Axum, this is the obelisk of Axum, and that's the flag. And again, you can see the same satanic pentagram. Big fat coincidence, right? Now, I'll come back and talk a bit more about flags, but on the topic of obelisks, you also find them prominently on gravestones. Here's, for example, one. This is, you know, it's for $1,000, you can find a cheap cemetery granite obelisk. And you will find these obelisks around cemeteries everywhere. Now, who are the people who are buying these obelisks? Maybe the people who are totally oblivious, right? But do you really need a massive structure like that once you're dead? Can your relatives pay? They can pay that if, and maybe only if, they've been a member of the global crime cartel. But when they are a member, it is just a done thing that you know, put a symbol there. And the reason for that is if you go to a cemetery, and by the way, you can see these obelisks everywhere. You can see it in cemeteries in Britain. You can see it in cemeteries in Germany and in Hungary and in Romania and in Italy, absolutely everywhere. What this is if you go through a cemetery, you can see the vast reach of this global crime cartel. Right there, even the dead are cartel signaling with this. And why would the global crime cartel do such a thing? I mean, once these people are dead, you know, what the hell do they care? You know, who they worked for or what cartel they belong to. But this, and remember, this is a sex and death cult at its core, right? So fucking and killing are the major business plans. These are trophies, okay? So the Vatican also has a claim to your soul after you're dead. They can still make money off you. And what this is advertising, okay? For the insiders, let's say you want to recruit a new person, right? Every year there are newborn people every day, and you need to recruit these people, and you need to convince them that they should work for the organized crime cartel or else. And one way to show them is to take them to a cemetery, right? Creepy place that reminds them of death, okay? Which is a good thing if you want to blackmail them. And then you say, look at how many people already worked for us. You can see it right there. And you can also see that typically the ones with the obelisk had the most money because they could afford these big whopping gravestones. And then you can say, well, you can either work your ass off and struggle all your life, or you can work for us and we'll make you rich. And look, these are our members who passed on. And as you can see, they were pretty rich at the end of their life. So this is how it came about that our cemeteries are littered by symbols of the mafia. Okay. Now, let's return to the flags. So I pointed out this flag, and the people who have followed the Techno Crime Fighters Forum have already seen my presentation. Now, this is going back to November 2017, and then I dated the file January 2018. So this presentation is ancient, but I already talked about cartel signaling. So this is a term that I coined to try to explain to the world that the cartel will have these signals, and when they signal, they are trying to convey a message, and this is a universal language. Okay, now this is pretty obvious for the members of the cartel, but for the normals, this is news. Okay, so cartel signaling is basically gangster talk. Okay, now you had gangster talk and this sort of insider code words all throughout the centuries. In the modern day, we know about the pedogate and pizzagate symbolism, okay, and you can research that. And those were insider signs to signal the sexual orientation of pedophiles. You know, were they into young boys or were they into young girls? All these had their symbols. But going back further in time, there was, for example, also the double Dutch. Why would it be called double Dutch? Well, this was the language spoken by the mercenaries, you know, otherwise known as pirates, who were working for the Dutch Empire, a seafaring empire. So the double Dutch was them speaking Dutch, maybe some foreign words that they picked up around the world, but also using code words. And this is how these mercenaries and these criminals, these sailing, you know, water criminals, could communicate across the entire Dutch Empire. Now, if you're from London, you probably know Cockney rhyming slang. That also is an insider language, and it is intimately linked to the crime cartel and their foot soldiers in the city of London. So nothing new here. This is what every police officer should know, right? Now, cartel signaling, you will find these days for the global crime cartel typically using the symbolism which is these days attributed to example, the Freemasons, which are Vatican Front, the Illuminati, which have infiltrated the Freemasons, but actually they were hired by the Vatican bankers to pre-select the more, how to put it, cutthroat of the Freemasons and pull them into a sub-secret society to pull off the black ops, as we would say these days. Okay, now these are the Illuminati. The Satanists, well, they are probably the oldest. They predate the Freemasons and the Illuminati, right? The Satanists, well, Satanism is the, I would put it as the fetishization of psychopathy, right? Worshipping Satan, worshipping crime, worshipping sadism and hurting people, that's Satanism, okay? But at the core of it, it's crime and it's psychopathy. That's what it actually is. Now, these days, we have certain symbols for this global crime cartel, and maybe it even works if I show you like this, okay? So the typical mafia symbols, as I explained, are number one, the all-seeing eye, right? Fire representing hell, the pentagram, the devil's horn, Baphomet, which is the head of Satan here, right, as a goat. And here you have the upside down pentagram. And then the number 666, known as the devil's number, you know. Ugh. But you also have black and white. For example, the Masons have black and white, the chessboard, as tiling in their so-called temples, right? They're playing chess with our lives. But you also have the Masonic double pillars. You have the obelisk. That's the one I talked about. You have pyramids in general. This is the top leadership, probably the coolest place to be. You've got snakes, right? Snakes, they represent the psychopaths, the psychopathic worldview, you know, the deception and the sudden attack and all that sort of stuff. And then you have the dragons, right, as these mythical creatures who can fly and all this sort of stuff. Okay, now these are the typical symbols. There are many more, but these are the main ones. And as you are going through life. Oh, actually, sorry, another symbol, the artichoke, that represents the mafia. Okay, now this image I photographed myself, and this one is from in front of a church. Okay, I think this particular image, if I remember correctly, is from a church outside of Baden-Baden in Germany. But the same artichoke is outside the cathedral or the big, massive cathedral in Budapest, right? Or the Basilica, or whatever it's called. The big whopping church in Budapest. But you also find it in churches in Transylvania. I find it on the fence, right? And this is almost like a little perimeter that they put around. But ultimately, the artichoke is selected because if you look at an artichoke, it has many, many, many layers, and then this juicy heart. If you make an artichoke salad, you typically use this bit here. But this heart is protected by many, many, many layers, all right? And of course, you know about Project Artichoke, right? The CIA, the Crown Corporation in America, again, using mafia symbolism. And again, mafia here, I mean it globally, okay? It's not just the Italian mafia. This is a global language. But, okay, so let me just skip all this. I explained in this presentation how old this mafia is. Here, for example, this is a Roman era mosaic, and again, it shows the all-seeing eye and people trying to defeat the all-seeing eye, trying to stab it, pick its eye out, and, make dogs attack it and all this sort of stuff. So the all-seeing eye was a bad thing. It's also called the evil eye, right? The all-seeing eye of the mafia. They represent evil. Ancient, it goes back to Roman times. Now, the spread of the mafia, okay, here you have the two-hand symbolism. This is from a book in Italy, 1914, right? There we have it. So this is ancient, from the Roman times all the way to the 20th century, all the way to today. But what I really wanted to show you is the spread of the mafia globally. Again, if you have seen these plots, I apologize, but let's just run through it quickly. The satanic pentagram is another symbol where they mark their territory, okay? Now you will find this. So first of all, this is the original satanic pentagram, and then typically they show the silhouette. You'll find the satanic pentagram, you won't be surprised to hear, in the old flag of the Soviet Union. And I draw your attention to the fact that it's combined with the symbols here of a harvesting tool and a hammer. So harvesting and smashing things up seem to be combined under the star of Satanism. And what happened in communist Russia? Well, they smashed up the country and harvested it, right, under satanic principles, on a background of a lot of bloodshed. Red. There we are. The entire program in one flag. This is the this is meant to read China. China Workers' Peasant Army, the Red Army in China. Again, the same program. And what happened in China? Well, the country was smashed up and harvested, by Satanists under a lot of bloodshed. Ah, there you are, right? China today. Well, they, the big satanic pentagram seemed to have, I don't know, had little satanic babies, 4 satanic babies. So these 5 pentagrams, 5 times 5, still seem to operate under red background. Well, okay. From this alone, you can guess that a lot of shit still goes down in China, satanic nonsense. But how can it be, right? How can it be that it's the same symbolism that you also find in, in the Roman era, right? Going all the way back to Roman mosaics and this sort of stuff. Well, it's because it's the same global crime cartel. This is Vietnam. These are all these countries around the world, right? Sometimes same colors, always the same star. This is Ethiopia. And my God, you can see the original satanic pentagram. And then here, these 5 stars indicating the Baphomet symbol behind it. Okay? So from this alone, you can guess that whatever went down in Ethiopia was even more sadistic and brutal than what went down here, which, many cases says a lot. And as we all know, Ethiopia is a country that used to be very rich in many ways and now has been utterly devastated. This is not normal, guys. This is not the work of the Ethiopians either. This is Ethiopia being hit for asset stripping by the global crime cartel. Here's Libya, you know, which looks like Pac-Man desperately trying to swallow the satanic pentagram. This is Turkey doing the same. You know, Pakistan, Algeria has already swallowed it. Singapore can't get enough, you know, devouring 5 pentagrams, 5 times 5 again, on the background of, you know, red and white Switzerland. And if you know about Singapore, you also know that it's kind of like a tax haven, you know, a bit like Switzerland and the city of London. So again, you've got the red and white. Here, all the other countries around the world, you know, and then also notice certain things. For example, how many countries have the very same color code, although they are fundamentally different. So Puerto Rico has the colors of the United States, but so does Chile, Cuba, North Korea, you know, Liberia. What's going on? Here you have Venezuela. It has a rising sun of pentagrams. Brazil has a starry sky of pentagrams. Granada has also got the flame representing hell, you know. Good God. Here, Dominica. And then, of course, you have the United States with 50 pentagrams representing the 50 satanic states, right? Completely surrounded by the Swiss colors. If I had to make a random wild guess, guys, I would say that the US is being asset stripped by Satanists and the money goes to Switzerland. And if we ask the people in finance, I think we'll find out that that's precisely what's happening. The European Union with 12 satanic states. And the question is, which are the 12 satanic states? You know, but anyway, there we are. Here, Australia, it has a little satanic pentagram, but otherwise it seems to be fine, apart from the fact that, you know, you've got the big Union Jack right at the heart of it. You know, here in New Zealand, it has 4 satanic pentagrams. The Cook Islands, these dependencies, even atolls seem to be satanic, and so on, guys. You know, here, even the Antarctic lands. What the hell's going on? Why do we see the same pentagram? Is that literally the only star that a graphic designer can dream up? And again, you know, little satanic pentagrams hidden here and there. And then we've got literally El Salvador with the all-seeing eye in the pyramid right there, you know? Is this coincidence? Here, the proposed flag of reunion has the pyramid and then it has the Jesuit sun, you know, like a beacon. I would almost guess that there's some military bunkers in, you know, reunion, perhaps. And then this is Esperanto. Again, this is a language and not a country, and yet you have the same structure, you know, so what the hell is going on? So in other words, what I'm trying to explain to you guys is that if we're saying that there's this global organized crime cartel and it has gone totally undercover and under the radar of all of us, that's where we can confirm that that's true, because we're waking up these days and we find all these obelisks around the world and we find the satanic pentagram on all of our flags. What happened? What happened? How the hell can it be? You know, and by the way, open brackets, what the hell were the police services doing? You know, this thing is ancient. I can't be the only person to ever point this out, right? But anyway, so this is what we have. Now, let's go back and let's find out how the hell can something like this come about? You know, that we have a global takeover by organized crime. So if you really want to understand how that came about, let me just show you some things. Hang on. Okay, so this presentation is massive, very long, but let's skip all that. Okay, let me free up some storage space. I need to close all these windows that I've opened about with images and websites. Okay, so if we really want to understand where we're heading with this, right, we need to go back in history and we need to find out Oh, by the way, I wanted to show you just a few more things on the topic of the spread of this satanic nonsense. Here we are. Yes. Okay. So this is, so far I had, I talked about Russia and Asia and Latin America and all this sort of stuff. But then there's something that is called the capital of the Illuminati. So in other words, that is the capital of organized crime. And this is a place called Astana in Kazakhstan. And there, the global crime cartel, well, the people seem to have been poor enough, and this place seems to be far enough out in the desert that people didn't care. So the crime cartel went nuts, and they literally wanted to build an entire Illuminati or crime cartel city. So you have this big pyramids, right? And then pyramids at the top. But you also have other structures. And also in Kazakhstan, you have a pentagram here, a pentagram park that you can see from Google Maps. And then, of course, when you listen to this here claims the mysterious pentagram on Google Maps explained. Yeah, my lower spine. Sure, the head gardener was just trying to explain geometry homework to his son, and that's why he, did these paths. Yeah, sure. No, what this is the global crime cartel marking territories, and in other words, they are saying we own Kazakhstan. Okay? And if that weren't obvious from, Astana, here's the pentagram, and we've marked the territory, and all of you can see it on Google Maps. But there's many more buildings. So if you just type in, I think here I typed all-seeing eye and building, the all-seeing eye being another symbol, you can find this symbol absolutely everywhere. You can see here, for example, an entire, big tower, with the all-seeing eye at the top. I'm not sure if this was photoshopped, but it might as well be there. In other places and churches, you've got the all-seeing eye right here, the Jesuit logo with the sun in the background. Then you also have this, for example, here is in Venice, the all-seeing eye in Venice. And what else did I find? Oh, yes. And then you've got the all-seeing eye here in the New York subway station as a memorial to 9/11. Now, if you know anything about the crime cartel, you can immediately figure out who organized and who staged 9/11. It was the people who own the territory on which Washington, D.C. and the Congress sit. Okay? It's the same people. Here, they put their signature right there. In case you don't get it, there's a daily reminder in the subway station. So guys, okay, I hope I really brought it home to you. Now let's go and have a look at the history. So let me just close these windows. Okay, so what can I show you in terms of the history? Now let's go back and figure out how the hell did we get here? How the hell did we end up in this sorry state around the world? And the way we got here is, let me share my screen. Let's go back, right? And let's go back to basics. So this, ladies and gentlemen, is 117 AD. And the plot you're seeing is the area in red represents the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire already had a currency, which, by the way, is a global currency. It was precious metals. It was gold and silver. Okay, so you had these Roman emperors minting their own silver coins, but overall, right, people didn't care whose mug was on the silver. What really mattered was the silver content and the gold content. So already in 117 AD, we know that there was an empire stretching all across Europe and all across North Africa and here the Middle East. And they all had the same rulers, the same system, and the same currency. And this currency was shared also between the territories to the north and to the south and to the east and to the west. They were all operating on a gold basis. Huh. So what happened? Did this system ever become smaller? And then they say, oh, yes, but the Roman Empire, it broke up and yada, yada, yada. And I'm saying, no, it never did. This is nonsense. Because when you're looking at a structure like that, you've got a visible part, okay? And that if you remember the pyramid, you've got the base of the pyramid, and that's where the normals like you and me, you know, sit. And then you've got the top bit, which is invisible. So what I'm saying is that what actually happened is that the base of the pyramid, the visible part of society, got reorganized because the people in it could be much better controlled if you kept them like horses or cows in a paddock. So if you made little paddocks and you put all your white ponies in one and all your black ponies in the other, right? They had their little organization and their little governments and all this sort of stuff, and were much easier to control. And what I'm putting to you is that the top bit, the actual stone obelisk, never changed. In other words, the base of the obelisk was sometimes repainted, and they drew country boundaries on this, you know, on this territory, but the top part never, ever changed. Okay. Now, I'm going to prove to you that this is precisely what happened. But before I get onto this, let's do the groundwork. When you are ruling over that many people, right, back in 117 AD, you kind of need to control them, right? So you have your Roman soldiers, and you've got all these people you station everywhere, and you brainwash and pay off the local population to keep an eye on the other part of the population, and so on, right? But then you need one organizational structure to make sure that everybody who tells you, I mean, you are typically in Rome, right? You're controlling everything from this little point. And you need to be sure that what the people, the messengers who come to you with messages, that they're saying the truth. How the hell can you do that? Well, what you need is a vast, massive spying operation. You need to recruit the most voyeuristic and the most snitchy snitches, who are the most venal and who would do anything for money, including, you know, selling you their grandmother. And once you've recruited them, you can run the show. Okay? So what I'm trying to tell you is that the Roman Empire, to be able to be the Roman Empire, needed to have not just soldiers, it needed to have a massive intelligence agency, as we would call it these days, or secret services, right? Now, as soon as it's secret, something happens, something that is inherent to the system. As soon as it's secret, it gets taken over by organized crime. And I can prove that to you. If you go to my YouTube channel here, okay, this is Dr. Catherine Horton. You can find me on YouTube /C_stop007. Of course, it's obvious if you're watching me on YouTube, but I'm also going to upload my videos elsewhere, which might not have the playlist. If you scroll down to the lectures on systems analysis, please have a look at the systems analysis basics. In the very first one, right here, I explain capture. Now, what I'm trying to explain to you in this 11-minute video is that if you start off with a human organization, whatever its purpose, it typically has this kind of pyramid structure. You know, you've got the workers, and then you've got the team leader, and then you've got the department leader, and you've got the boss. This system, this organigram is universal. If you Google organigram, you will see the same structure everywhere. Sometimes the number of departments changes, or the number of, you know, team leaders, or how many people they supervise. But overall, you have this sort of pyramid structure, you know. Now, this arises directly out of our genetic makeup because we are group animals. So each one of us is predisposed to follow a leader, apart from a few people who have what I call the alpha gene, you know, being an alpha animal, where you have the intrinsic, makeup to lead. And then you have stronger leaders, so you will group leaders and they will follow a leader in turn. And yes, this is the organization we end up with just by our genetic makeup. By the way, you couldn't do this sort of stuff with cats because cats are not group animals. They are lone creatures. They get together to mate and that's it. And then they bugger off. So good luck trying to have this sort of organigram with cats. It just won't work. So this is inherent to our nature. This means if it's genetic, right, it's a pattern that arises out of our genetic preferences, it means that it's universal across the planet. And it's also universal in human civilizations across time. Now, what I'm showing in this lecture is that if you have something, for example, you've got a group of criminals, okay, who want to take over your organization, they'll typically, these criminals are the little black dots, they'll try to blackmail one person and they will try to take over a position. Okay, so I'm summarizing this video. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. They can, you know, even if they just capture or infiltrate a low-ranking position, with time they will migrate up. So as you're clicking through the video, you know, the person has been promoted up and then they are diverting funds out to the criminals and so on. And with the level of promotion, you know, there are more and more criminals migrating up. They're controlling the organization below. And eventually, when they reach the top, which is this triangle, it's called deep capture. Okay? When they sit on the board, the criminals start to control the entire organization. Okay, so this is how capture comes about, right? But then what I also explain is that once you have deep capture, the system cannot recover itself, especially when these criminals made it onto the board, onto the top. What you would require is that, for example, the boss of a company sacks himself because he's such a criminal. Well, he's never going to do that because he's making far too much money. So in other words, once you have deep capture, an organization cannot recover itself. When you have secrecy, no one knows about what's going on at the top. So then, especially a system like that cannot recover. And in every secret system, in every system where money exchanges hands, criminals have got an interest to interpose themselves and to get hold of the money. So in other words, what I'm proving in this little 10-minute lecture is that system analysis predicts that once you have any sort of big group of people, they will organize themselves like that. They will be prone to deep capture, or to capture first and then deep capture. And once they're in deep capture, the system does not have a mechanism to recover from deep capture ever, 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 ever again, unless something cataclysmic happens from outside. Now, I encourage you to watch this video. It's called Capture Systems Analysis Basics, lecture number 1, to hear all the details. But overall, you get the idea. So what I'm saying, going back to the Roman Empire, is that to hold this show together, you needed to have a massive secret service. As soon as you had a secret service, you were open to capture and then eventually to deep capture by organized crime or by criminal elements. Once this system of Roman Secret Service entered deep capture by criminals, it could not have recovered ever again, ever. So what I'm trying to put to you is that since 117 AD, well, you guessed it, Secret Service has been ruled by organized crime. Okay? Now, I also put it to you that the organizational structure, the obelisk, never changed. This is why we still have these criminals plonking their obelisks everywhere. If it had been an outdated model, they wouldn't do that. But it's still the most successful business model. So what I'm saying is that if they're using the same symbols, these are the same people. Okay? The very same people who put an obelisk into Alexandria that was then, you know, lugged off to London later, the very same people who put an obelisk into the heart of the Vatican are the very same group of people, organizationally speaking, that have put the obelisk into Sao Paulo, into Singapore, into Moscow and St. Petersburg. Okay? Now, the tower, if we go back to the obelisk, the stem of the obelisk, right? It's the secret part. That is the secret organization of society. So let's just have a look at the obelisk again. Vatican. The Vatican obelisk, right? So what I said is that if you look at it here, this is the secret insider part of society. This is the public part of society. The public part got reorganized when the Roman Empire was said to have fallen apart, but the secret part remained. The secret part, as I explained to you using systems analysis, is by definition in deep capture by organized crime, and its very top will be organized criminals. It was the case in 117 AD, it will be the case today. Because systems analysis tells us that it is impossible for a large system to recover from deep capture unless something cataclysmic happens externally to it. Okay, you need to have an external force that's either cataclysmically devastating or comes from a system that is bigger for this to change. So, since we have the same obelisks since the time of Alexandria to now, I can tell you that nothing changed. There was no cataclysmic event. The Vatican is still standing, still operational. They are still putting their little obelisks everywhere. So nothing changed. There was no cataclysmic event. And once you are the size of the Roman Empire, well, here, you know, there wasn't a bigger system coming along and defeating it. We were told it was, oh, it broke up from the inside. Oh, bullshit. Big fat bullshit. This is impossible. Systems analysis tells us it's impossible. So what happened is that everything that we learned in history was just a little kabuki theater that was put up or put on by this massive tower of insiders and secret service, secret society people for the normals. We were organized in little paddocks, and sometimes they moved the boundary posts of the paddocks. That's all that happened, guys, okay? This big, massive stone cock still remains to this day. It has just grown in size, as we saw in the Washington Monument. It's massive these days. Okay, that's the only thing that changed. So, once we got that into our heads, if you had to guess who is ruling the European Union, well, it still includes Rome, right? Well, you can guess that it's probably the same people. So if you find obelisks in all the countries here and new obelisks popping up, then don't be surprised. You know, it's the same people. It's the same structure. So what you're seeing, the difference between this, the European Union, and the Roman Empire, it is just the boundaries of the paddocks. That's we are in, yeah? Okay? You the ponies and me the pony, we are on paddocks that have sometimes changed the boundaries. That's all. But then there's the superstructure above us, okay, that remained the same. Now, if we go more, you know, international, we have NATO. So this is the NATO member states, which includes Canada and the US. Big structure. It's the same Roman Empire, okay, guys? Nothing changed. There was never the big cataclysmic event. There was never the big asteroid wiping out, you know, the obelisk builders, obelisk-toting criminals. It's the same structure. The very same structure. Do not be fooled. Now, you have this big gaping hole here. So here you have Switzerland and Austria not appearing as members of NATO, and you have Switzerland prominently not appearing as members of the European Union. But from previous broadcasts, I explained to you that Switzerland, as the historian Sean Ross explained, Switzerland was given to the Knights Templar, who were the mercenaries of the Vatican. So again, if you look at this type of paddock, it looks like Switzerland is not part of the other ponies. But when you actually know how the global crime cartel operates, you know that actually this is the headquarter of the head ponies. Okay? That's why it looks like it's not part of it, because this is basically the office space of the farmer. All right, that's why it doesn't appear as part of this. So don't be fooled, right? Switzerland is owned by the Vatican crime cartel. It rules the European Union, okay? And don't be fooled that Switzerland doesn't appear to be part of NATO. It is the HQ. It is the lead military bunker here in Europe. This is a NATO HQ, guys, all right? And once you understand that Switzerland is not actually a hole in NATO, it is a NATO HQ in Europe, you suddenly understand why this curious bit of news popped up recently, which was some, I can't remember what the actual debacle was, if it was some, planes being taken hostage or something happening to planes. But the bottom line was that it was after 5 p.m. and Swiss air defense had buggered off home. And then I think Slovakian or Slovenian or whoever was on shift, came in and defended the Swiss, and the Swiss airspace. And the question that I was asked over and over was, how the hell could that be if Switzerland isn't a member of NATO and is not a member of the European Union? Why are other countries taking care of Swiss airspace and the Swiss Air Force fucks off home at 5 p.m.? Well, it's quite obvious and quite easy to understand once you know that Switzerland is the HQ and everybody else has got a duty to defend the HQ. So, of course, the Swiss can fuck off home, and it's down to the ponies, right, to take care that the head farm is not raided, or some crazy ponies don't kick the door down. This is how it works. If you don't know the structure, these bits of news make no sense at all, because the concepts you're running around in your head with are nonsense. But once you have the right model, it is just clear as day. It's obvious. Okay? So I hope that by just looking at the maps, I could, I could keep your attention. Now, let's get down to the real things that matter. So most of you already know that, okay, the Roman Empire never crumbled. Most of you have heard the slogan, right? The Roman Empire never stopped. Now, some of you also know about the Nazis and how Nazis have been taken from Nazi Germany and, kind of funneled out through Switzerland by the Jesuits, down to Italy, put on ships or whichever, on planes, and then taken to Latin America and taken to the US. Most of you know that. Now, unless you have the superstructure in your mind, again, that stuff doesn't make any bit of sense, right? Why would people who are fighting the Nazis help to funnel out the Nazis? And once you know that there is already a global intelligence agency, you cannot funnel out head Nazis past the spies of the opposing side, because that's the whole point of spies, is to keep an eye on these people, right? So you can't just make these people disappear. It is impossible, especially when you know about infiltrators and how the entire spy game works. It is just not possible. So, but if you understand that there's the superstructure that never changed, the big obelisk, right? Sorry about the hand movement, right? You know that, well, it's them. They organized the Nazis. It was one asset stripping program, just like killing all the Russians, just like killing all the Chinese. They killed all the Germans and a bunch of other people, right? And then, the head Nazis or the head members of the secret society were funneled out and went to another part of the world, owned and controlled by the global crime cartel. That's what happened. So easy to understand. And all this could be pulled off because this entire structure is undercover. It's under our noses. It's in our face, yet under our noses. But once you take this base model and you embrace it, you can explain all the world events from your bedroom or from your desk, So another bit that you need to understand, this is a video clip that many who have followed Techno Crime Fighters Forum might have seen before, but it's extremely important to understand, what's going on. So it's important to play this again. So So far, you have just little me here. You know, I'm just a former particle physicist. I'm just a little woman somewhere in Switzerland. You don't need to take my word for it. You can look at my evidence, but, you know, that doesn't really convince you maybe. But I learned during my time at St. John's College, Oxford, where I was a fellow. You know, I was a little junior fellow and I was sitting around all these senior academics. And St. John's College didn't admit any women until the end of the 70s. And the first women they admitted were fellows. They didn't even admit, you know, young women. I mean, good God. So at St. John's College, there was still a lot of men, you know, austere-looking men. And when I came up as a junior fellow, I very quickly learned that I can talk to these men about facts, and no matter how convincing my argument or how good my facts and references are, they will not take me seriously because I'm just a little woman. But then I learned that I would, you know, give an opinion, and then these old guys would just forget about whose opinion it was. And if the opinion was good and the facts were good, it would stick in their mind. The meme would stick. And then 3 or 4 weeks later, you know, after they slept over it and thought it through and mulled it over, and most importantly, forgot about that it was me who told them, they would think it was their idea. And once it was their idea, you know, coming from a man, ideally from themselves, it was good, right? It was immediately accepted. And so it came about that I would sit at St. John's at lunch and at dinner, and an opinion of mine that had been fought and put down as piffling nonsense, 3 or 4 weeks later was told back to me by, you know, the very people I spoke to, and they presented it as their own opinion or their own idea, and they thought it was brilliant. It was spot on, right? So this is how I learned that this sort of mental process goes on, especially in older men, right? And most importantly, they found it particularly convincing if they thought that it wasn't even their idea. They remembered they heard it somewhere, but they assumed it was one of their mates, right? Another man. So people find it typically very convincing when, you know, challenging opinions, presenting new information come from a man, ideally an older man, right? So I typically search desperately for my opinions or evidence be somehow given in a video by an older man. So at this point, I would like to play a clip from a BBC documentary, which is called Secrets of Her Majesty's Secret Service. It was published in 2015, and it describes the British Secret Services. And in this video clip, they interview, for example, Sir John Scarlett, who's now a former head of MI6, okay? The head of a secret service. And in this little documentary, they talk about all these weird little traditions that they have at MI6, and then Sir John Scarlett explains it all. So now let me play this clip and let's hear it from the horse's mouth, as it were, right? Let's hear what's going on at MI6, and then let's try to understand it and put it into context. So here we are. This is the BBC documentary, Secrets of Her Majesty's Secret Service. You can find it on YouTube. It's 2 hours and 24 minutes long, and at 9 minutes 44 seconds, you will see the following clip. Now, I will try to make this as loud as possible so that I think the way it works is that my microphone picks it up again. I hope you can hear this. Let's play it.
He brought with him the naval tradition of the captain, writing his log in green ink. Even now, the chief of MI6 still writes in green ink because Cumming did.
Okay, so what was said here is that Cumming, who was the first head of MI6, the organization MI6, his name was Cumming with a C, and he brought with him the naval tradition of writing in green ink. Interesting that such a naval tradition would exist. And, you know, he signed his name under the documents, right? So this is what this entire section is about. It's about Cumming writing in green ink and signing his name as C for Cumming, as these people put it. Now, let's start with the green ink, it being a naval tradition. Why the hell would that be the case? Green. What does green remind you in terms of the cartel? Well, me personally, it reminds me of snakes, right? We have the color poison green, Giftgrün in German. They call it Giftgrün, poison green. Well, poison as in snakes, venomous poison, that's green, right? Typically green snakes. So the naval tradition, if I really had to go out on a limb, you know, and guess why there's a naval tradition of writing in green ink, if there's a massive, ancient, long tradition incorporating mercenaries and seafaring people, I would guess that it's some sort of satanic tradition to do with snakes. The head snake was writing in green ink. Could that be the case? So this is my personal guess, or educated guess, I would like to say. So much about the green ink. Now, he signs his name as C.
His most famous legacy, however, is his signature. Cumming was given the title of C as a cover. It was simply the first letter of his name.
Okay. Now, when you're the head of MI6 and your name is Cumming, and then you're given the letter C as cover, it's not so much a cover as your initial, is it? So really, if you have to come up with a cover name for the most important, you know, director of your Secret Service, is C the best you can do after thousands of years of Secret Services? I mean, couldn't you call him John Doe and give him the initials JD? I mean, that would cover up his name, right? If he is known as Cumming in public life, then surely you could think of something better than C. So this is bullshit, okay? So clearly he was not given the cover C as a cover. C means something else. It has nothing to do with his name. If I were right about this assumption, what would follow is that people after him whose name is not initialed with C also sign with C.
It's obviously where M in James Bond comes from, and even now, the chief of MI6, as he's now called, signs his letter with a C.
Oh, okay. So as I predicted, even now, the chief of MI6 signs his letter with a C, even when he's not called Cumming? Huh, odd.
Signing yourself as C is a reminder that we have a continuing tradition. Everything leads to everything else. There's been no break. That's what's exceptional.
Oh, that was Sir John Scarlett, former head of MI6. He confirms that, you know, as chief of MI6, you still sign your name as C. And then what was so curious is that he said, well, you know, what's exceptional is that everything leads to everything else. There has never been a break. There has never been a break. And this is exactly what I'm telling you. There has never been a break from the Roman Empire. Everything led to everything else. The Roman Empire led to the European Union. It led to all those little paddocks in between, right? It led, for example, to the French Revolution. If you look into the French Revolution, you know that it was done by the Masonic crime cartel of the Vatican, okay? The Russian Revolution, if you know that Lenin, you know, was educated by his handlers in Switzerland, you know, the country of the Knights Templar, controlled by the Vatican, then suddenly the Russian revolutions make a lot of sense. And when you know that the Vatican owns the city of London since before William the Conqueror, then it probably makes a lot of sense that C has something to do with the Vatican, much more than with Mr. Cumming, who was just, you know, a figurehead. And Mr. Cumming is no more, but MI6 continues. So why would they sign with C? Okay, so from this, it follows immediately that C has nothing to do with Cumming. It is a cover, but it's not covering up C for Cumming, because that's not a cover, it's an initial. And what I'm putting to you is that one thing that starts with a C related to the Vatican is the Crown Corporation. The Crown Corporation. The Crown has nothing to do with the royal family of the United Kingdom. The Crown are the owners of the City of London. The Crown Corporation is the organization of the global crime cartel. And because it's so old and because it's predating William the Conqueror, it must be a corporation under canon law. Canon law, church law, that's the only thing that predates William the Conqueror. Okay, so the Crown Corporation is a corporation under canon law that owns the City of London and is abbreviated as the Crown. The Crown. And that is the crown that we saw at the top, if you remember, going back to the obelisk. Okay, so the obelisk in Moscow, right? I said at the very top of the, where's this thing? Ah, God, this is the obelisk. The one with the satanic pentagram is the one in St. Petersburg. The Romanovsky obelisk here, okay? So when we look at that on, God damn it, here on Wikipedia, right? Let me zoom in again. What I wanted to show you here at the very top, remember that at the very top, what you had is the Crown Corporation, the crown that rules them all, the biggest crown of the three, right? That's a Vatican thing. That's the Crown Corporation. That's why you find the crown absolutely everywhere, okay? So C stands for crown, okay? And when the head of MI6 signs his name with C, as it was explained here, right? He signs it as C. It means it's an edict from the crown. It's an edict from the Vatican. You have to do it, right? You're sincerely the crown. That's what it means, okay? The green ink, a C in green, the snakes. And as I explained to you before, if you look at the Vatican, right, you have something called Nervy Hall. For all those people who are new, Nervy Hall is a big auditorium here in Vatican City, right there. And what it is designed to look like is the head of a snake. Oops, sorry. Here, the head of a snake. There are the eyes, the scales, the fangs, the tongue. That's Nervy Hall, unnerving hall, right? At the heart of the Vatican. That's because they consider themselves to be the head of the snake. If you see it from outside, it's the head of the snake with the eyes here. It's just emerging from the ground. Now, this is a modern building from the 1970s, but if you look inside St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican, right, what you will find right at the front here, there's a good image, you will find these big four writhing snakes. These big things, these spirals going up, those are snakes, ladies and gentlemen, right? And the reason why they're massive, I mean, look at the size of people, is because this is really where, you know, the snake is, you can see the main part of the snake right here, right? That's why it's so thick in the Vatican. Now, these pillars are ancient. Nervy Hall is a lot more modern, but both of them show the same thing. Okay, the head of the snake. So you have the green for the snake and you've got C for the Crown Corporation, right? And then suddenly everything makes sense. So let's just hear this again, because now you know what they're talking about. You can probably hear this a lot better. Okay, so ask yourself if this, what you hear here, makes sense on the surface without having this model in your mind.
He brought with him the naval tradition of the captain, writing his log in green ink. Even now, the chief of MI6 still writes in green ink because Cumming did.
His most famous legacy, however, is his signature.
Cumming was given the title of C as a cover. It was simply the first letter of his name. It's obviously where M in James Bond comes from, and even now, the chief of MI6, as he's now called, signs his letter with a C.
Signing yourself a C as a reminder that we have a continuing tradition. Everything leads to everything else. There's been no break. That's what's exceptional.
Okay, I can't show you anymore or the video will be blocked, right? But I hope that you understand that what I'm saying is the truth. You've now heard it from an older male, right, who was the head of MI6. Everything leads to everything else. There has been no break. That's what's exceptional. Okay, there we are. So you had right from the horse's mouth, the head of MI6 tells you that nothing changed. There has never been a break. Never. And this is precisely what systems analysis tells you. Once you have a system of that size, okay, it ends up in deep capture, but most importantly, it's run by organized crime at the top, because organized crime always has an incentive to infiltrate secret organizations if there's a lot of money and power involved, right? So you end up with deep capture in before 117 AD. You remain in deep capture forever after. You will be ruled by organized crime forever after. Now, organized crime is not governed by regulators. It pays no tax and there's no regulation. When there's no regulation, it means that as a monopoly starts building, there's no regulator saying, "Oi, you can't have a monopoly in drug smuggling. Oh, you can't have a monopoly in child trafficking." So when you don't have a regulator that's controlling the, what's it called in the US? I think you call it anti-cartel legislation, anti-cartel regulation. What you end up with is a cartel, right? And most importantly, you end up with one cartel around the world. Only one global crime cartel. That's what follows. It follows from the mathematics and the physics of the system directly. And there you have the head of MI6 saying there was never a break. So it also follows, if there never was any break, it immediately follows that Sir John Scarlett, who spoke at the end there, head of MI6, is working for organized crime. He's an organized criminal. That's what follows from what he said. So when you understand the system, you can hear that right on television in an interview by his own good self, he just admitted to being an organized criminal. There we are. And the reason why he can admit it on camera that he's an organized criminal is precisely because a lot of things about the secret services have gone undercover. So it's not just the states that have gone undercover, it's also the secret services themselves, which were secret to start with. They too have gone undercover. So, okay, I've got so much more to tell you, but the entire going uncover bit is coming to an end, because once you understand this, once you understand how what we're dealing with is one global crime cartel that owns the secret services because they have put them into deep capture. Well, actually, they've set them up from day one. But even if you don't want to make that assumption, you can prove using system physics that they have put the secret services into deep capture already in 117 AD. It remains in deep capture. You can also prove that just like organized crime has no regulation, the secret services owned by organized crime also don't have regulation. And this means that the secret services around the world are all just one cartel owned by organized crime. That's what directly follows. It follows that there is no difference between MI6 and the French secret services. There is no difference between the CIA, the FBI, and MI6. And most importantly, there is no difference between the KGB, Chinese secret services, Russian secret services, and MI6 and the CIA. They are all part of the same organized crime cartel, which is organized into the Crown Corporation, which means they are all part of the same corporation. They are all part of the obelisk. We, in our little paddocks, we are in different paddocks, like Russia, and we need a little animal passport that we can go from Russia to the paddock of the United States, or if we want to go to the UK and so on. And sometimes they make extra big paddocks for us so that within the European Union, we can just travel around paddocks. They put little gates and like the cattle can go from one grazing field to another by themselves to save the farmer, work. We are just like happily going from Sweden to Germany and to Denmark and everywhere. And we don't even need our little cattle passes anymore. But I tell you, the organizational superstructure above us all is universal. It's one global organized crime cartel, one global secret service. It directly follows. And it also follows that organized crime is of course after money. So very quickly, they will capture the sources of money, as in the banks, will put those into deep capture, especially once they own the secret services. right? And then it also follows that in the finance sector, we expect to see one global cartel. And that is precisely what you find evidence for in the news. So I will prove that to you. So if you go into, let me share my screen and show you how you can find information about this. If you don't believe me, you can go and Google something that's called the One Bank. And if you go to Zero Hedge, right, the financial news website, they talk about the mystery of the One Bank. Who are its owners, right? You can find all these articles about the One Bank. Now, what do they mean by the One Bank? The One Bank is the one global bank that owns all the commercial banks, all the central banks, and all the private banks. That's the One Bank. Okay? Here. And they even state here, the One Bank is a super entity comprised of 144 corporate fronts. A front. That sounds like something that organized crime and the Secret Services might have, no? And the One Bank, okay, which comprises 144 corporate funds, with approximately 3/4 of these corporate fronts being financial intermediaries, i.e. banks, right? According to the Swiss computer model, via these 144 corporate tentacles, the One Bank controls approximately 40% of the global economy. The only thing more appalling than the massive size of this crime syndicate is its massive illegality. Now, this is the Zero Hedge here, financial news or financial whistleblowing or what you want to call it, right? Talking about one global cartel, and they call it a crime syndicate, the One Bank. Now, if you understand systems analysis, just from the obelisks and just from the Roman Empire, you can conclude that there is such a thing as the One Bank. You expect it, okay? Now, here's the evidence for the One Bank, okay? And then with time, I will produce evidence for the fact that there's one intelligence agency around the world and one global crime cartel controlled by the Crown Corporation. Now, I also told you about cartel signaling, the secret language of the mafia. Cartel signaling, because the global crime cartel owns the music business and the film business, cartel signaling appears in music videos and also in Hollywood movies. And I already pointed out to you this music video called International Love. International Love. And in this music video here, which I'm not going to play to you even for a second or my video will be banned, at the very end, they show the globe, right, with a lot of flags. Here, oops, that was, sorry, let me catch it. And they show the flag of the crown. Hang on, let me catch it here. There. This is the globe and they show one big crown. Now, this is the Crown Corporation. And as I explained in videos before, International Love is basically a sing-along song by the crime cartel where they tell you that they control human trafficking around the world. Okay? And you have all the symbolism of the all-seeing eye, the obelisk, and the crown littered throughout the video. Okay? So, there we are. This is the Crown Corporation. This is the BBC documentary here about the Secret Services. So you now understand that MI6 is owned by the Crown. You understand that MI6 and the CIA, you know, if the One Bank exists, then there must be the one agency, okay? And there's the one crime cartel. And it follows that these three entities own each other. They are one and the same entity. Okay, the Crown Corporation. And this is why the chief of MI6 signs their name with a C. It has nothing to do with Mr. Cumming. Okay, nothing. But once you understand this, you also understand, for example, this whistleblower called Kerry Berner, and she is an ex-Catholic nun who was sexually abused by the Catholic Church, okay? And she tried to take them to court, and then she couldn't. It was blocked. And then she heard about many, many other survivors and victims, and she discovered this massive organized crime cartel right at the heart of the Catholic Church. Now, if you understand that the Vatican has an obelisk, that the Vatican is one of the city-states, the 3 city-states of the global crime cartel, this doesn't come as a surprise. The Vatican is these days already synonymous with organized crime. They are ruled by organized crime. So if you go up against organized criminals, what you expect is they're assassins, right? They're killers. And then that's exactly what she found. People started being murdered by these Vatican killers. And she also discovered, I think it's somewhere here at 9 minutes 14. At some point in the video, she shows a big book. It's called Vatican Assassins. Hang on, where is it? Oh God, I even found the point in the video to be able to show you. Now, anyway, go and listen to her. This is the video here. This is part 2 of 4. And at some point she says, you know, she started researching and she came across, oh, here it is. Here it is. This book, right? And just look at the size of it. Here, look at the size of it as she's holding it. This is called Vatican Assassins, right? And it's that size. These are all the Vatican assassins throughout history, right? Now, you expect a book that size once you know that the Vatican is the head of a global crime mafia. Of course, you expect them to have a lot of assassins. So if you start looking, you'll produce a massive book. No big fat surprise. Okay? And by the way, I encourage everybody who can afford it to buy this book, right? And start reading. And then you know, then you understand what I'm telling you is the truth. Okay? Now, let's bring this up to today. We now understand that this global crime cartel has gone undercover. So today, when you hear investigators, and there are many excellent investigators out there. I would like to point you here, for example, to Jason Goodman, who does a lot of excellent videos and interviews, right? Called his platform is called Crowdsource the Truth. Last night, here 18 hours ago, I was listening to this video, The Clinton Lawyer. And there you have the investigator, Charles Ortel, here, talking about the Clinton Foundation. Now, what they have uncovered in the Clinton Foundation, guess what, is a massive crime cartel, massive amounts of fraud, right? Now, if you understand that the crime cartel put a big Masonic phallus at the heart of Washington, D.C. ages ago, you will understand that the crime cartel will control the American president. After all, the White House is on the private property of the organized crime cartel, okay, guys? So, in other words, the president, as soon as he sits in the Oval Office in the White House, is sitting on Vatican property. The desk is owned by the Vatican. His pen is owned by the Vatican. The roof over his head is owned by the Vatican. So, he is owned by the Vatican. Do you understand? So, of course, don't be surprised if you find that the Vatican is a global crime cartel, and then the American president, like Bill Clinton and his wife Hillary Clinton, are involved in organized crime. It immediately follows. And by the way, we've got Donald Trump, and, you know, there's a lot of good things that Donald Trump does, but he also said publicly that he's a Mason. He also, if you look at his family portrait here, Trump family portrait, and by the way, Trump supporters, don't hit the roof. I'm with you all the way, but I want you to go into this awake and not be manipulated. Let's have a look at the Trump portrait here. Okay, this is the Trump portrait, family portrait, and what you find here is the crime cartel's symbolism. You have a fresco just like in the Vatican, and people pointed out that you can actually see Saturn in one of these frescoes, but you can also see his son riding the lion. Now, the lion is in the crime cartel the symbol for finance. His son is already riding on the back of finance, so I can predict that his son will become very, very rich. Okay, now the lion, you also find this in the crest of the United Kingdom. The crest of the United Kingdom, looks like this here. And there you will find the lion with the satanic tongue, and you will find the unicorn with the satanic tongue. And in fact, you'll find the crest. The crest here is the only thing that represents the royal family, by the way. Only this. That's the symbol of the royal family. All the other stuff around it is from the crime cartel. And as you can see here, the royal family is surrounded by the line of finance, and the unicorn typically represents intel, Vatican intel. And Vatican intel has a collar around its neck, and it's chained down, and it has a crown around its neck. So in other words, this is Vatican intel in the service, collared by the Vatican, collared by organized crime. And you can see that on top of the crest, you have, you know, some sort of military, you know, armory. And above that, the crown and the Swiss cross, the Maltese cross, right there, another secret society. And then on top of that, a little lion, just as satanic, and another crown. Oh, cute. Oh, cute. What does it mean? Well, what this means, in the UK, you have finance, right? So you've got one crown jewel, that's finance. And then you've got another 2 crowns here. 3 crowns in this image. But most importantly, this big guy here, right, is the lion of finance. That is the lion, or the unicorn of Vatican intel. Okay, once you understand the symbolism, you can go back to the Trump portrait, and you can say, of course, Trump works for the Vatican, right? Works for this cartel, because for starters, his son is already riding on the back of the lion of finance. You've got Masonic double pillars here in the background, and Trump is doing the symbol of the pyramid with his hands grinning cheekily, right? And then you've got all sorts of kind of like, I mean, this is the outfit that maybe, you know, you could have gotten away with in Greece, right? This is a Greek woman's outfit. So in other words, you've got all these symbolisms right here, you know, and here again, we've got the splitting, the duality looking out, you know, the window divided, and so on and so on. So of course, Trump has to work for the cartel because he sits in the Oval Office, guys. If you want a president who does not work for the Vatican, right, you need to get him a new house. You need to put his office not on the extraterritorial city-state owned by the Vatican in Washington, D.C. You need to put it on mainland U.S. soil. You can put it anywhere, right? Put it, I don't know what, you know, somewhere. Put it in Nevada or Utah, whatever. Just put it somewhere outside of Washington, D.C. And once you have built him a house and an office, you've got a fighting chance of having a president who's not a member of the cartel. But as it stands, you've got the Greek symbolism, you've got the duality, the line of finance, and the pyramid, and the cheeky smile. And Saturn above their heads, right? And you've got this guy in the Oval Office. So much about your independence, so much about Trump. And then if you research him, you find out that he was involved in casinos. That's typically something that, you know, the mafia does. And they use the casinos to launder money. And he's involved in property. You know, that's also what the Vatican does. It owns the ground. It buys up these, it buys up property. So there you have it. You basically have a guy who's a member of the mafia. He has to be, otherwise he wouldn't be there. Now, before you hit the roof over this, dear Americans, of course, you can have change, but you have to be aware how much pressure you need to put on a guy who's a Mason, a member of the mafia, to get him to do the right thing. You can't just send him an email and ask him nicely. That will not be enough. To be able to actually control a president who is a Mason and a member of the cartel, you need to put more pressure on him than the cartel puts on him. You need to put a gun to his head, metaphorically speaking, as the American people. Of course, you can use this presidency to achieve good, but then all of you 350 million American people need to get your ass off the sofa. Okay? And when Trump does amazing things like sack the head of the FBI, you need to know who it is he puts in this person's place, and you need to really watch him. Because, for example, he just appointed the head of the CIA, and it's the psychopath Gina Haspel, known as Bloody Gina. She sounds like a bloody, psychopathic serial killer. Well, that's not a surprise if you know that the CIA is the crown corporation in America and is organized crime. Gina Haspel is precisely the type of person the organized crime cartel would want to appoint if they plan to mass murder the Americans. But, this is what I'm saying. I'm not rubbishing Trump, and I'm not spoiling your dream. I'm just waking you up, little children, because after all, here you are, and you're watching a video about the crime cartel, and I need to tell you from Switzerland what's wrong with America. And I have never even been to America. So clearly you've got some waking up to do. So anyway, don't despair. I still support the things that Trump does to some extent, but I also don't support others. And what I'm saying is, it's not just about Republican or Democrat. Both of them are in the cartel. What it is about is having a person who's willing to fight against the crime cartel, but then you have to offer him, a better deal. At the moment, the best deal he has is to sit in the Oval Office. And once we start talking about neurotech, I can guarantee you that the White House has to be the most neurotech place on earth. I bet you if you opened any of the walls, you should find neurotech devices absolutely everywhere. You should find bugs, and you should find, surveillance bugs, and you should find neurotech devices, because that's what the crime cartel would have to do to control the president. So my advice to President Trump is to buy himself a bug detection device, don't trust his employees, and search his Oval Office for bugging devices every day. And then open a couple of walls and look for neurotech devices. And scan your child and your wife and yourself for head implants. Okay? Because you will not feel them, you will not know them, and you will not see the scars, like I didn't. And yet I'm implanted to the hilt. So this is the sort of stuff you need to know, you need to do as Americans if you really want to have an American president and not a foreign-controlled president. But images like these should be a warning sign, and I haven't even talked about Trump Tower. All right? So, all your Trump supporters, be aware you're doing good work, you're going in the right direction, but be aware what exactly you need to do, and how far you have to go, and how many people you have to recruit week on week and day on day to actually make this, happen. It is not enough to be just outside protesting and supporting Trump, because then you're putting 350 million people's work effort into one man and his family in faith. Well, that's not good enough. The crime cartel is offering a better deal. So you guys need to start offering your president a better deal, and you can use the carrot, but also the stick, But you Americans, you also need to be aware that your country is under complete foreign control. You need to get the Congress the fuck out of Washington, D.C. And you need to literally remember the buildings that I showed you, right? Okay, this is the Brits, right, being fucked by the same crime cartel. But you guys remember the Washington Monument, right? Remember the images? And I showed you this image, where is it? Where you can see the Washington Monument, this one here. You can see the Greek temple, the phallus, and the big boob. If you want your country back, you guys don't put out alternative media news channels where I can see the big boob and the oculus in the background. Because what that shows me is that you guys still didn't get it. This isn't alternative media. This is clueless media. All right? I'm not going to embarrass any of the journalists doing excellent work who have this as a background. But please, guys, fucking stop. I know the building to you looks pretty, but you've got a big boob in the background. And the all-seeing eye. I mean, thank God not many people put a big cock into the background of their videos, but please also not the big boob, okay? And I'm going to be a stark and in your face until you guys get it. Get these symbols out of your life, because these are the symbols of the global crime cartel. Comprende? Get the Oculus out of this. You literally need to demolish these buildings. That's what you need to do. And you need to regain ownership of the territory of Washington, D.C. You need to make it buy the territory or just annex it. As a country, you've got the right to annex it, invade it, and declare it to be the ownership of the American people, and take it away from the Vatican crime cartel. And what I would do is I would say the ground under Washington, D.C., but then you need to write a legal paper, okay? You need to take ownership of the land, and you need to transfer ownership of all these things, right, into public ownership. And okay, if your heart is really, bleeding for the big, beautiful building, even though it's a big boob, you can keep it because it has office space. But really, this monument, the big cock, I don't think you need that in your life. It doesn't have office space. And the tourists, once they understand what it stands for, well, they will be laughing about you Americans. Do you understand? So this is why I'm saying, if you want a revolution, what some people put out is that, oh, there were the Navy SEALs and they landed a helicopter, on the roof of the CIA. The revolution is coming. Well, bullshit. Bullshit. To me, that looks like the Navy SEALs version, or the Marines version of the California Dream Boys, flying over to the CIA for, I don't know, a strippers for a birthday party for some senior manager of the, at the CIA. That's what I'm reading into this. If you want a revolution, you take the Marines and the Navy SEALs, and you take a helicopter and you fly up there, and you get 4 Navy SEALs, upsailing and writing onto this big cock, something like, think on your sins, Masons, for example. That would be something. Or, watch this being chopped off, Masons, or something like that. That's when you have a revolution. Okay? So you are dealing with a massive crime cartel undercover. And if you want to be rid of this crime cartel, you need to know its symbols. You need to bring it from undercover into the public eye. And then you need to destroy it. You need to jail the members, right? And you need to cut off this particular member here, right? And then you need to build new stuff that's American with a new design that does not have the obelisk or Greek temples or all-seeing eyes and dragons and snakes and satanic tongues and all this sort of stuff. You need to discover your own symbols. Can you think of something Native American, from the days before the crime cartel came to your shores? Something, okay? And the same is also true of the Russians. If, Russia wants to have independence, you need to get rid of this shit. You need to scrub the Masonic double-headed eagle from your insignia, you idiots. Because unless you do, I can tell you that, the KGB or FSB or whatever the fuck it's called these days is identical with the CIA. It's the same corporation. Okay? And the people in China, you need to get rid of these Western, big stone cocks. What the hell are they doing in China? They're not part of Chinese, art and sculptures. So throw these things out. I mean, frankly, the police should just confiscate these things, right? Put it into police storage as evidence of a big, centuries-old conspiracy, criminal conspiracy. That's what needs to happen. Okay, so this is this entire system going undercover. I hope I managed to prove it to you, right? There's many, many more things that we can talk about things that have gone undercover, but I want to stop here, and I really hope that I haven't lost you all, guys. So many people have seen this before and they are familiar with this material. They have deduced it themselves, and that's, credit to them. But many, many people have no idea about what's going on, and you need to educate them, okay? You need to show them that this is real. You need to explain to them the symbolism, and all of us, we need to learn this language. because the people who have put up all these symbols, what they were doing is they were marking their territory. Okay, when one of these obelisks appeared anywhere, for example, in Transylvania and in Hungary, you sometimes find these obelisks at the heart of villages. And if you know about how, you know, Transylvania was colonized, you know, by Westerners and other people, well, they put their churches there, and these, they put little milestones. Sometimes you have little obelisks as milestones, you know, and when they conquered a town and they had enough people being members of the cartel or the Masons, they put up a Masonic, you know, symbol. It's like we own the place now. And that's what happened. And this is what happened around the world. Okay, this is the same symbol. It's universal. So anyway, you need to educate people what this means, right? And now we can all laugh about all these, you know, media outlets that have the capital in the background, because we all know what it actually stands for. You know, and this is serious, guys. It actually stands for deep capture by organized crime. And then this organized crime running brothels and their major business plans being fucking and killing and, you know, being of psychopathic brains. And they make joke about us. And these jokes are right there in our face, in our architecture. They're literally in our face. So do we need that? Or can we just tell them to just get lost? And, you know, humans are territorial creatures. So if you want to regain territory, you need to throw out these symbols. That's what people did after what they thought were the revolutions or the counter revolutions after the communist revolutions, when they got rid of these statues of Lenin and Stalin. You threw out these revolting symbols of mass murder. But I'm telling you, you still have revolting symbols of mass murder. And why do we need these stone edifices, you know, these weird symbols that are so removed from normal life in our city centers? Why do we need this shit? Just put a park there, something we can enjoy, nature, you know, or something. Put a hedge there, or a tree, a beautiful tree or something. Okay, I know the tree of life is used by the crime cartel as well, but hey, at least it's nature, you know, or something. Think of something. And most importantly, think of something that's unique to your region, that's local, that makes the region special, that is typical. You know, you have so much natural wildlife, animals that only appear in your region. You know, I mean, the Canadians had a good go when they had the flag and they put the maple leaf up there. But then again, they went for the Swiss colors, right? Red and white. Hey, they're still owned by the same people. And, you know, the maple leaf just so happens to have 5 tips. So, well, but it wasn't just, you know, in the right direction. Or you put a kiwi, you know, an animal on your flag, something that's definitely defining you, something that's worth cherishing, that's worth protecting, that represents your region. Now, that's, I think, the direction we should move into. Anyway, I have spoken enough. I'm just looking at my notes, and there's so much I still want to talk to you about. But if after this lecture, we all get it into our heads that this big global crime cartel is all around us undercover, that it owns the banks, all the banks, that the banks are the one bank, it owns all the secret services, you know, that there's only the one agency around the world, and that there's only this one global crime cartel, and that our fight is not against the Russians, the Iranians, or the Chinese. The fight globally is against this one global crime cartel. Our fight is against the one agency, against the one bank, and against the one crime cartel. You know, that's what this modern fight is about. And when we understand that, we finally can come together around the world and we can reach critical mass. We can combine with criminal investigators from China and Russia who know about their local bit of the, you know, the human trafficking and all that, and we can finally shut these people down. So this is what this entire episode is about. I hope I really could bring it home to you that this entire thing is global, and we really have to hurry up, guys. That's the truth, you know, because I am being machine gunned every single night by satellite. I wake up every morning being a bit more physically damaged, a bit more brain damaged, and at some point there comes the cumulative point where I cannot recover. So Swiss secret services are in deep capture by organized crime. So are the police. so are the courts and so on, you know, but we need to fight back. And now let me finish by a question that I've seen in the chat just when I came on. Somebody asked, if we go to court against these criminals in a civilized, orderly fashion, or let's say we take military tribunals, whichever courts, what if the judges are corrupt? What if they throw out the cases on frivolous grounds? What do we do then? And the question was, can we take these court cases that were thrown out on frivolous grounds and then go and basically have a comeback? And the answer is yes. We can. And that's precisely the plan. I do expect the courts to be criminal. I expect the courts to be in deep capture, just like finances and just like the police and the secret services are. That's what my whole lecture was about. But what we have to do is we have to be aware that we're dealing with deep capture, and we need to run the process for recapturing our systems. So please go to my YouTube channel. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel also, that you get the new videos. And there in the systems analysis basics, you will find a video about recapture. Please watch it and make you, you know, think about your own ideas about how to do it. You know, we need your creativity. We literally need absolutely all hands on deck. We need everybody to help with this. Wherever you are in the world, you're fighting the same crime cartel with the same symbols and the same underlying structure. So if you have a good idea what to do and how to do it, please come forward, because wherever you are in the world, we can apply and test your idea anywhere in the world, you know? And that's the thing. Once we figured out how to fight them in one place of the world, we can find them absolutely everywhere, you know? It's the same system. So this is what I wanted to say today. Thank you for listening, and please subscribe. If you're on YouTube, please subscribe below. Please also subscribe to my Twitter feed. I'm on @stop007.org. Sorry, not dot, no dot. It's stop007.org on Twitter. And there you can find news and updates. And today, for example, I tweeted about pedophile symbolism appearing in ice cream, a famous type of, or you know, very known type of ice cream that's known in the UK and in Germany, and it actually has a pedophile recognition symbol as its corporate logo. Okay, so what is that? That's the global crime cartel in our face. You know, this is real, people. This is unfolding now, and please support other researchers. You know, the researchers I presented. Please also support other YouTube channels and other investigators. They all need our support. And please also help them, you know, encourage them to put their research into actually court actionable formats, into court cases, to come forward as expert investigators, expert witnesses. So please, all of us around the world, wherever you are, in Russia, in China, in Timbuktu, in Trinidad, you know, we are all fighting the same thing. Please support us all, and please let's stick together through all of this until we shut down these criminals. Thanks for listening, and bye for now. Take care, all of you.